Right now, let's get over to Dr. Scott Gottlieb. He's the former FDA commissioner. He's a CNBC contributor, and he also serves on the boards of Illumina and Pfizer. We've been talking about what's been happening with the coronavirus. At this point in the United States, there are 85 deaths that have been reported, more than 4,600 infections reported across the country. We've been hearing from the CDC about making sure people maintain social distancing, don't get into crowds. President Trump even saying he does not want to see people congregating in crowds of more than 10 people. Dr. Gottlieb, where do things stand right now, just in terms of how long you think this lasts?
Well, I think we're going to start entering a period where it's going to accelerate, and the case counts are going to start to rise pretty quickly, especially now that the diagnostics are going to start to be deployed more broadly. We're going to be turning over the card on more cases. You know, sort of an optimistic case, and it's not an unreasonable case, is that this, again, peaks out sometime late April, early May. And then we're coming down the epidemic curve. So that means it still lasts well into June, through June, into July, but you're peaking out in terms of the number of daily cases that you're reporting sometime towards the end of April, early May. And that's if we put in place mitigation steps, and it extends out a little longer because we're trying to keep the peak of the epidemic down. And then you hopefully see a tail-off in cases in the deep summer, July and August. Probably still get some transfer of this. You still get some transmission because it's so novel, but you don't see the epidemic spread. And then I worry a lot about the fall. Your guest before talked about this fact. This doesn't go away. We're going to need a vaccine or a therapeutic. The reality is we can get a therapeutic, I believe, by the fall, as well as a point-of-care diagnostic that lets doctors diagnose this much more quickly so we can isolate and contain people. But we really need to put a lot of effort behind that. And I don't see the sense of urgency that I believe we need to try to get that.
When you say sense of urgency, what has to happen and who has to do it?
Well, look, I think the government should be trying to put real resources behind this and a real concerted effort. And you can create a special task force inside the Food and Drug Administration, detail your best people to it, and have them work in a dedicated way on the development of therapeutics for the coronavirus. A vaccine is going to hopefully be obtainable, but it's a long way off. I mean, year and a half, 2 years. In the interim, we can have antivirals that are directly acting on the virus for people who get into trouble with it. We can have an antibody-based prophylaxis that could protect frontline healthcare workers, the elderly, immunocompromised, cancer patients. That's the product that Regeneron's working on. And then you couple that with a point-of-care diagnostic that literally sits in the doctor's office like the flu swab or Cepheid's Gene Expert. You adapt that for the detection of coronavirus, and then doctors can diagnose people very quickly. You can get them into quarantine. You can contain local outbreaks, and then you can use your therapeutics to try to protect the people who get themselves into trouble with this, who end up in the hospital.
Meg Terrell was telling us a little bit about Regeneron earlier today, just the idea that its rheumatoid arthritis drug, Kevzara, looks like it could be going into clinical trials earlier by the summer. I'm not even sure I'm getting these details right, but what do you know about Regeneron, what it's working on, and how promising that might look?
Well, there's also products that can help treat people who get sick. We're learning much more about this disease and how to treat people who get sick. And one of the things we believe is that part of the reason why some people get so severely ill, not everyone, but some of them, is what we call a cytokine storm. It's an overwhelming immune response to the virus. The body mounts a very active immune response, and it's actually the immune response that starts destroying your lungs and your tissue. And so if you can interrupt that immune response, or some aspects of that immune response, you can avert some of the destructive effects of the virus. And so there's drugs that can do that. They've been used in China. They're showing promise. Some of them are going into clinical trials. There's some clinical trials already underway in China. So that's also a measure of the fact that we're learning to treat this better. That's why I think we're in better shape than we would have been 2 months ago, because we understand how to use technology in a more robust way to help people who get very sick. But we could have far better tools by the fall. This is achievable. We know how to develop antiviral drugs and things that target viruses. And Regeneron, for example, developed an antibody-based prophylaxis against Ebola, and they had a product in development against MERS as well that I believe was in primates. And so that company's done this before. There's others working on it as well, but Regeneron does have the capacity to do this at scale.